not you think Omnisphere 2 is just a pad monster. Or maybe you think UVI Falcon eats Omnisphere for breakfast. That's really none of my business. What is my business is helping you guys get better at ambient music. And the truth is, whether you own Omnisphere 2 or not, you might have clicked on this video because you thought to yourself, what kind of crazy Signs of Life gonna make today? Well, thank you very much. But in today's video, we're gonna take a deep dive into one of my all-time favorite sound designers patches. You guys hear me talk about him all the time on this channel, Echo Season. In this patch, he showcases all kinds of tricks that Omnisphere 2 can do. So we're gonna take a look at some of those techniques, and then hopefully after that, we're gonna design one of our own patches around those same techniques so you guys can add it to your sound design workflows, all right? So if you like this kind of video, make sure you smash that like button on the way in, subscribe to the channel if you guys feel called to do so, and let's get into some Omnisphere 2. All right, so here we are inside of Ableton Live 11. Now, before we start, I want to give a huge shout out to Echo Season. I would not be the sound designer, musician I am today without his knowledge, his inspiration, and his guidance. He is just a wonderful human being. You will never meet another person like Peter. So I highly encourage you guys to go check out his work. His music is on Synphaera. His sound design can be found on Material by Synphaera. It can also be found on Luftrum Sound Design and other outlets. He's just one of the best human beings I've ever met in my life. So go check out his work. And the patch we're gonna go over today is called Shadow Vision. And it's off of his sound set called Aeronautics, which you can find at material.bandcamp.com. So let's go ahead and dive into Shadow Vision. Now, Shadow Vision, the description says it's a dusty, grainy pad that's useful as a sound bed underneath other textures. It's slightly dark and moody. And then use the mod wheel to bring out more of the synth pad layer. So let's just listen to Shadow Vision here. Find out what it's all about. It is pretty taxing on the CPU. And that's due to the Granular Engine being used the way that it does. So let's go ahead and play it with the rest of the track and see how this kind of works out. Ah, yes. All right. Very nice. So it does provide that grainy bed underneath the rest of the track going on. So let's find out why. One of the secrets to Omnisphere 2, and I think Peter's sound design in general, is the use of the modulation matrix to control everything else on the synthesizer. Obviously, you can do this in every other synth, but Omnisphere 2's modulation matrix is super powerful, and it's also very useful in the way that it's implemented. So you can see here that all of these layers are, they're triggering different highlights inside the modulation matrix. Now, you can see like we're on layer A here. And so what's highlighted is the modulation sources and targets that are applicable to layer A. So you can see here that layer A has LFO3 and 4 here, controlling sample, granular speed and position, the intensity as well as the pan. And then the aftertouch here is controlling LFO1 depth. Now, what is LFO1 controlling? Let's go over to layer D and find out. So LFO1 is actually controlling the fine pitch of the oscillator itself. So when I play a key, it doesn't do much, but when I lean into it, then that fine pitch starts to get deeper and deeper. Now that's one of the subtle human touches that Peter uses in all of his sound design to make things more human or bring stuff to life. So I really want to emphasize that. So again, we have all these different things that are being controlled. Okay, so let's just talk about layer A, continuing on. We have the Granular Engine here. And the Granular Engine is using the sample called Boomer 1. And the Granular Engine, it's being modulated by an LFO. So not only are you taking micro granular samples of this, it's moving across the sample itself. And that's what's creating that CPU hit, is all that calculation that's necessary. Also, the longer that I hold my keys down, the more intense this gets. You can see the grains are starting to spread out. So that's one of the subtle things that you can do inside of Omnisphere that makes sound design so powerful, is you can use the subtle touches inside the modulation matrix to control certain things inside of the synth itself, okay? So think about that when you, in terms of context, how many sound sources Omnisphere actually has. And then think about what you could do with those sound sources. It's really crazy. So that's one of the things that I love about Omnisphere, is you never feel like you're at a loss for something to design or something to do. It's literally endless. And I'm so excited about what they're gonna add in the future. I mean, it's like what we already have is just beyond what we could have imagined before. It's just quite a huge collection. Now, it doesn't just do sample-based synthesis. I wanna make that clear. It's also virtual analog engine, as well as a bunch of other things that it does. So that's the first thing, okay? Using modulation inside of things like the Granular Engine to bring out even more life. And so we made a drone, or he made a drone out of this granular patch, and that was sort of like the bed of the rest of it, but then he started layering on top of it. So let's look at the other layers. We have a medieval string Renaissance stretch here. We have a viral memory Moog B, so that's like a virtual sample of a synthesizer. And then we have virtual analog over here, okay? So now let's talk about another thing that I really wanted to emphasize in Peter's sound design in Omnisphere 2 is his use of the bias point. What is bias? Bias is a really great way that Omnisphere implements how to do things at certain points on the keyboard, okay? So at a basic level, you can think of bias as like, bias points are certain keys that at that point, you could either increase or decrease something, okay? So a basic example of that would be the amplitude of all the layers. So you could take those layers down after a certain point. So let's look at that, okay? We're gonna just right click on the amplitude here, and we're gonna show modulation bias 1. Now it says that the bias point is A2. Now, when I play a lower key, you can see that it starts, that white dot right there starts at a lower point, and as I start to move up on the keyboard, that white dot starts to move. And that's because the bias point has been set, and it's also inverted here. So rather than increasing, it's decreasing as we get higher. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So the bias point can be a powerful modulation source or a target for you to say, well, not only do I want to take the level down, but maybe I want to increase the rate of an LFO after a certain key. And then as you get higher, the rate can go faster. I mean, that's just another example of how creative uses of bias can be implemented in your sound design. So Peter uses bias all over the place. You can see that there's bias 1 attached to the amplitude of basically all 3 layers. And then you have bias 2. He also uses bias 1 here in a really interesting way. He uses it in the 3-band EQ. So let's go over here to the effects, and you can see that as you get higher on the keyboard, that frequency of the high band is going to decrease because he has it inverted. So again, interesting ways to use bias in Omnisphere 2, which creates, again, really rich sound design experiences. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is over here in layer D, he uses this random unipolar source. And now, random unipolar is creating random values every single time that you press a key in a positive direction. That's very important. So the random unipolar, in this case, he's using it to control synth shape. Now, he's barely using that. And this is one of the things that I picked up from Peter was he's using these subtle modulation things. And we do a lot of that work on other synthesizers, namely the Hydra synth. I use it all over the place and in Vital. We have the random unipolar, and I'm gonna click on it, and then we're gonna enter the parameter value, 0.011. So it's barely there, right? But it's those little single touches of a humanistic feel that give all of your sound design an edge, okay? And that's what I wanna emphasize here. So even though it's barely there, and every time you hit a key, it's a random value, it still does make your patches feel lifelike, okay? It puts a lot of life into it. So he's modulating the phase here, he's modulating the analog knob, the shape, it's all kinds of things. And then again, you have that beautiful subtle modulation of the pitch on LFO1, okay? So those tricks are just some examples of how good Peter is at sound design and why you could take some of the things that he does and apply them to whatever synthesizer that you're using, be it the Hydrasynth or Vital or in Omnisphere 2 itself, or even other synthesizers that I haven't mentioned here, okay? So think about that. What can you do and what can you use inside of the modulation sources inside of the synthesizers to add to your own productions and make better sound design, okay? So let's listen to the track again with Shadow Vision playing. Don't want to get too carried away now. Anyway, you guys get the idea, okay? So I'm gonna stop the track for a second. Now let's switch patches. Next one I'm going to highlight here is a patch of my own called Docking Station. Now this was off Eternia for Omnisphere 2, which you can get at material.bandcamp.com. And this is one of my own patches. And I want to just go over the main description of it. It says textural and panoramic granular sampled guitar pedalboard pad. Whew, that's a huge sentence, right? What does it mean? I sampled my guitar on my pedal board, and then I took that sample and I put it inside of Omnisphere 2. Aftertouch adds interest, and the mod wheel darkens the patch and increases the delay, okay? So let's listen to it. This is Docking Station from Eternia. And let's listen to the rest of the track with it. Ah, yes. I love this patch. Very nice. Okay, so let's dive into the patch itself, all right? So inside of the mod matrix, again, we're looking at the different layers. There's 4 different layers. And the first layer is the granular sampled pedalboard sample from my guitar, okay? So that's moving across that sample right there, okay? We got that. So then we also have a virtual analog. This is the Wasp saw, right? And again, you have those subtle touches of modulation. This is the mod envelope, which is controlling the synth shape. One of the great things about Omnisphere is not only have the amp and filter envelopes, that's standard, but then you have the different modulation envelopes that you can use to control a number of different things. And the way they've implemented it is so elegant, right? So you could loop these envelopes. We haven't even talked about that yet in any of the videos that I've created, but like, seriously, there are so many things that you could do here. So I'm subtly modulating the synth shape using that modulation envelope. That's a cool touch. So if you have mod envelopes available, you can think about the different ways that you can utilize them. Obviously LFO2 here is controlling the pan, so we're going back and forth, left to right. And the modulation wheel is controlling the cutoff of the synthesizer. Now let's flip over to another one, and we have random unipolar here on layer A that's controlling just that subtle timbre change, right? So every time I press it, it's gonna be a different timbre or different sound quality of the sample. And again, subtle modulation. I can't emphasize that enough, okay? So we have, again, what we talked about. We have bias point modulating the amplitude. We have aftertouch here controlling the cutoff of the filter itself. So that's kind of interesting. So we go over here and we see that the filter here is being controlled by, you can almost hear that, right? When I lay into the keys, you get that extra opening of the filter, which is really nice. Okay, so that could be a cool use for live performance, implementations like that. So you can do your own little vibrato. That's always cool, right? Okay, so what else do we have here? We have on a layer D, again, synth symmetry and shape is being controlled by the random unipolar. And once more, you can see that it's barely there, 0.029, okay? Which is not much, but it's enough to say, okay, it's there and I'm gonna utilize it. So there you go. 2 examples of really good uses of sound design inside of Omnisphere 2. Hopefully that helped you guys. I'm passionate about this synthesizer because I understand how powerful it is, and I want you guys to not only take some tips from the way I do things in here, but apply it to your own ambient sound design workflows in Omnisphere 2 or any other synthesizer of your choice. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys like this video or you have any other tips about how to design sounds in Omnisphere 2, or your thoughts about this video in general, please leave them in the comments down below. What would you guys like to see in Omnisphere 3? It's probably gonna be here at some point. We're headed towards the winter. Winter NAMM is in January. So what do you guys wanna see different, and why haven't you taken the plunge to Omnisphere 2 yet? What's holding you back? Other than the price. That's always a factor. My name is Chris from Signs of Life. As always, keep your heads in the clouds and your feet planted firmly on the ground. I'll see you all in the next one. Thanks for watching. Peace.